At the time of this recording, we are now in the Final Four of the FIFA World Cup. And let me say, it's been one of the most fascinating World Cups in history. And most of the suspenseful news about the World Cup has not been really on the field, but actually off the field. And what we've seen in this rendition of the World Cup are stories that have been politically controversial. From President Trump accepting a peace prize from FIFA President Gianni Infantino to immigration laws that have affected the fans, players, and coaches of the teams, to President Trump's call to FIFA to remove a red card from someone on the U.S. national team. And while the Federal International de Football, or FIFA, is one of the most political sports leagues on the planet, it is not isolated when it comes to several major sports. The intersection of sports and politics is an interesting dynamics because politics has always been a part of sports. There is this false sense that sports is apolitical, that people in sports are supposed to be politically neutral. And while many people want to establish a line of demarcation between the two, unfortunately, sports cannot be separated from politics. It's too late. Whether it be athletes using sports to take a political stand, or the operational nature of a league or team that makes it political, sports has always fashioned itself into something that goes beyond the game. Sometimes it's about money. In some cases, there's a social agenda. In some cases, there's a moral issue. Whatever the case may be, sports has become very political. And it's not just on the professional level, but college, amateur, and international competition as well. Athletes using their sports as a platform is the most common use of taking a political stance in sports. One of the most recent actions of taking a political stance in sports is Colin Kaepernick, the San Francisco 49ers quarterback who decided to kneel during the national anthem to protest against racial injustices in this country. But before Kaepernick, you had Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who sat during the national anthem in protest against, you guessed it, injustice in this country. But even before then, you had John Carlos and Tommy Smith in the 1968 Olympics, holding the Black Power fist during their medal presentation. And then you have a few protesters that's not really talked about much, like Manhattanville College's women's basketball player Toni Smith, who in 2003, in protest against the Iraq War, had her back towards the flag during the playing of the national anthem. Another one is Toronto Blue Jays baseball player Carlos Delgado, who in 2004 refused to stand during the playing of God Bless America, also in protest of the Iraq War. And the protest against wars was not just the military aggression against Iraq, but also in Vietnam as well. Most famously, you had legendary boxer Muhammad Ali, who refused to be drafted by the U.S. Army in protest against the Vietnam War. He was stripped of his heavyweight title, he lost his boxing license, and 6 years of his prime due to being banned from the sport. Fortunately, he did get the support of several major black athletes during that time. And while Ali's plight is very well known, little is known about former football player Dave Megacy while playing for the St. Louis Cardinals. Megacy also protested during the national anthem in 1968 in this country's involvement in the Vietnam War. Needless to say, Megacy stopped playing football a year later. These are just a few examples of athletes' political stances playing out in sports. However, politics is embedded in several sports leagues. Take, for example, Major League Baseball. Professional baseball in the United States is the only sport that does not have a salary cap. For those who don't know, a salary cap is the limit a sports team can spend on their roster. When the salary cap is implemented, teams cannot spend over that cap for their roster's payroll. This is supposed to enforce competitive balance. Now, baseball has something called the competitive balance tax. It's somewhat of their salary cap, but teams actually can go over this cap. However, they would have to pay a luxury tax where that money is dropped into a revenue sharing pool where the poorest teams in the league would get some of that money. Unfortunately, this does not balance competition because while this has been implemented for several years, teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers have been able to outspend their competition and make common appearances in the World Series. While a poor team like the Oakland A's would draft and develop these great baseball players like Jason Giambi, but when their contracts are up, they go to big market teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers because a team like the A's cannot outspend them. This is laissez-faire capitalism being played out in baseball. This is what happens when money dominates the spectrum of the sports world without competitive regulation. You get politics, and this is why there might not be baseball next year. The collective bargaining agreement is set to expire in December, and the hardline negotiating topic is the salary cap. The union players and the big market teams don't want it, but the middle to small teams want it very badly. The politics of millionaire ball players and billionaire owners, and neither side is budging. This is sports and politics.